The afternoon sun hammered Red Mesa like a smith's anvil, turning the dust to powder and the adobe walls to ovens. Dakota stood in the shade of Brennan's General Store, watching the westbound stage roll to a stop. 3 passengers descended a cattle buyer. He recognized a whiskey drummer with sample cases and a woman in a gray traveling dress that had seen better days. She moved wrong, too careful, eyes checking every face, every shadow. Her carpet bag looked light enough, but she gripped it like it contained her whole world. When she turned toward the mercantile, Dakota caught sight of a fading bruise along her jaw, poorly hidden by face powder. He'd seen that look before. On his wife Mise, the winter they'd fled north from the reservation agency. That weight of always watching your back trail. "Papa." Dakota glanced down. Ista stood beside him, small for 7 years, her hand tucked into his. She rarely spoke anymore, not since the fever had taken her mother 3 months back. Doc Morrison said time would heal her. Dakota wasn't sure he believed in time anymore. "We'll get your peppermints," he said quietly, "and the flour your aunt needs." They crossed the street together, Istas's feet leaving small prints in the dust beside his moccasins. Inside the mercantile, the woman stood at the counter, counting coins from a thin purse. Otto Brennan watched with the expression of a man calculating whether charity or profit served him better today. "I can clean," the woman was saying. Her accent carried German edges worn smooth by time. "Or mend. I'm good with a needle. I can work for room and board until—" "Ain't no boarding house in Red Mesa, ma'am." Otto scratched his substantial belly. "Closest thing is the railroad camp, and you don't want to go there. Not a proper lady." Her shoulders stiffened. "I see. Then perhaps just some bread and cheese? I'll camp outside town tonight and move on tomorrow. Stage don't come back through for 3 days. Then I'll walk." Dakota was reaching for the flour sack when Istas's hand tightened on his. She'd gone rigid, staring at the woman with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Slowly, like a bird spotting a snake, his daughter raised one trembling finger and pointed. "She has Mother's medicine bag." The words shattered the silence like dropped glass. It was the first full sentence Istas had spoken since the funeral. The woman turned confused, and Dakota's gaze dropped to the small leather pouch hanging from her belt. His breath stopped. Elk hide tanned to butter softness. Quill work in the geometric pattern of his wife's clan, red, yellow, black, and white. The Thunderbird design that Mise had stitched with her grandmother's quills using the old songs. There were scratches on the leather now knew where, but Dakota would have known that pouch in pitch darkness by touch alone. He'd sewn it for Mise himself before their marriage, using leather from an elk he'd tracked for 3 days through snow. She'd worn it every day of their life together. She'd been wearing it the night the soldiers came. "Where did you get that?" His voice came out steady, though his heart hammered against his ribs. The woman's hand moved to the pouch, protective. "I bought it. In Santa Fe from a soldier. He said it was Apache Works, sold it for $2. It's mine legally. That pouch belonged to my wife." Dakota took a step forward, careful not to crowd her, but unable to stop moving. "She died wearing it. 3 months ago during the fever outbreak. I buried her in her blue calico dress, and that medicine bag was around her neck." The color drained from the woman's face. "That's not possible. I bought this 6 weeks ago. The soldier Corporal Teague, his name was. He swore it was legitimate trade goods." "Corporal Teague." The name tasted like poison. "Fort McRae." Yes, I think so." Otto Brennan had backed away from the counter, recognizing trouble brewing. Outside, a freight wagon rattled past. Istas pressed against Dakota's leg, still staring at the pouch with huge dark eyes. The woman's jaw set. She unpinned the medicine bag from her belt with shaking hands and held it out. I didn't know. I swear before God I didn't know it was stolen from the dead. Please take it. Dakota accepted the pouch. The moment his fingers touched the elk hide, grief hit him like a fist, Misai laughing, as she taught Istas to identify healing plants, Misai singing the old songs while she cooked Misai's hand in his during their wedding ceremony. The pouch still smelled faintly of sage and sweet grass, her scent. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Greta. Greta Vogel." "I'm Dakota. This is my daughter, Istas." He studied the woman's face, the fading bruise, the exhaustion around her eyes, the careful way she held herself like someone expecting a blow. "You said you can clean and mend." She blinked. "Yes. Why?" "Because my sister's husband broke his leg last week. She's running their house alone, caring for him and their 3 children, and she needs help. I can speak to her if you need work and a place to stay." "I can't pay you for. You just gave me back my wife's most precious possession. You could have lied, kept it, walked away. That's worth something." He glanced at Otto. "Put Miss Vogel's purchases on my account and add a week's worth of provisions." Greta's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back hard. "Thank you." Dakota nodded. He didn't mention that he'd be riding to Fort McRae soon, or that Corporal Teague had just made a fatal mistake. Some conversations were better saved for after dark, away from curious ears. Outside, the sun continued its work, and the dust continued to blow. But in the shadows of Brennan's mercantile, something had shifted. A door had opened, and through it walked both hope and vengeance, hand in hand. 3 days passed before Dakota rode for Fort McRae. 3 days of watching Greta work alongside his sister Ayanna, mending clothes with tiny, precise stitches, while Ayanna's children played nearby. 3 days of noting how she jumped at sudden sounds, how she positioned herself near exits, how she flinched when Ayanna's husband Cheyenne reached across the table for salt. On the morning of the 4th day, Dakota saddled his gray gelding in the pre-dawn darkness. Istas appeared in the stable doorway, bare feet silent on the packed earth. "You're going to find the soldier?" she said. Not a question. "Yes." "Will you hurt him?" Dakota checked the cinch, keeping his hands busy. "I'll ask him questions. If he answers truthfully, no. If he lies about your mother..." He left the sentence unfinished. Istas nodded solemnly. At 7, she understood more about violence than most children should. "Aunt Ayanna says Miss Greta was married to a bad man. She says Miss Greta ran away. That's not our business. Mother would have liked her." Dakota turned surprised. Istas rarely spoke about Misai directly. His daughter stood in the doorway with light growing behind her, small and serious. "Why do you think so?" he asked. "Because Miss Greta is kind, even though she's scared. Mother said the bravest people are the ones who stay kind when the world is cruel." Istas paused. "Will you come back?" "I always come back." Mother didn't. The words hit harder than any fist. Dakota crossed to his daughter and knelt, putting them eye to eye. "Your mother didn't leave because she wanted to. The fever took her. That's different than choosing not to come home. But you might get hurt, fighting the soldier. I'll be careful." He touched her cheek. "And Aunt Ayanna will watch you. Be good for her." Istas threw her arms around his neck, fierce and sudden. Dakota held her breathing in the scent of her hair sage soap and wood smoke. When she pulled back, her eyes were dry but determined. "Find out what happened," she said. "Mother deserves the truth." Dakota rode out as the sun crested the eastern mesas, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. Fort McRae lay 2 days south, a collection of adobe buildings and patched canvas clustered around a parade ground. He'd been there before during the treaty negotiations of '79 and remembered the commandant as a reasonable man who understood the difference between justice and revenge. The ride gave him time to think, time to remember. The night Misai died, she'd been tending fever victims in the makeshift hospital, a tent pitched behind the Pueblo church. Dakota had been hauling water from the creek when he heard her scream. By the time he reached the tent, soldiers were everywhere, horses wheeling in the darkness, gunfire cracking into the night sky. "Outbreak at the reservation," a lieutenant had shouted. Captain Ward's orders: burn the infected tents, contain the spread. But there was no outbreak. Just sick people and a captain looking for an excuse to clear land the railroad wanted. In the chaos, Misai had vanished. Dakota found her at dawn a mile from town, lying in a wash with her skull fractured and her dress torn. The medicine bag was gone. Doc Morrison said she'd been struck from behind. The soldiers said she must have run panicked, fallen in the dark. Captain Ward expressed his regrets and rode out the next morning. They'd buried Misai in the Pueblo cemetery wrapped in red cloth because they couldn't find her medicine bag. Istas hadn't spoken for a week. Dakota had split his time between caring for his daughter and trying to piece together what really happened that night. But witnesses were scarce, and soldiers protected their own. Now, 6 weeks later, Corporal Teague had sold Misai's medicine bag to a German woman in Santa Fe, which meant someone had looted his wife's body. Dakota's hands tightened on the reins. The gray gelding snorted, sensing his mood. "Easy," Dakota murmured. "We'll get answers, one way or another." He made Fort McRae by late afternoon of the second day. The post looked tired in the slanting light buildings that needed whitewashed corrals, that needed mending soldiers who moved with the sluggish certainty of men enduring garrison duty in the middle of nowhere. Dakota tied his horse at the hitching rail outside the quartermaster's office and asked for Corporal Teague. "In the sutler's tent," a private said, jerking his thumb eastward. "Playing cards, most like." Dakota found him there exactly as described. Teague was a raw-boned man in his 30s, with a cavalry mustache and eyes that shifted when Dakota entered. 3 other soldiers sat at the card table, money and whiskey glasses between them. "Corporal Teague," Dakota said, "I need to speak with you." Teague looked him up and down, Cheyenne clothing, long hair, the confidence of a man who'd learned negotiation before he learned English. "I'm busy. Come back tomorrow." "It's about a medicine bag you sold in Santa Fe 6 weeks ago." The cards in Teague's hand didn't move, but his shoulders tensed. Around the table, the other soldiers went quiet. "Don't know what you're talking about," Teague said. "Elk hide, quill work, Thunderbird design. You sold it to a German woman for $2 and told her it was Apache work." Dakota took a step closer. "That medicine bag belonged to my wife. She was wearing it the night she died in Red Mesa 3 months ago, during the incident with Captain Ward's troops." One of the other soldiers, a grizzled sergeant with stripes on his sleeve, swore quietly. "Teague, you idiot." Teague's face flushed. "I found that pouch fair and square. Weren't stealing if it was just lying there. Just lying there next to my wife's body. She was already dead, weren't no harm." Dakota moved. Not fast enough to be threatening, but direct. He planted both hands on the table and leaned forward, holding Teague's gaze. "My wife was killed, murdered, and you looted her corpse. Now you're going to tell me exactly what happened that night, or I'm going to the commandant with enough questions to keep you in the stockade until Christmas." Teague licked his lips. The other soldiers had pushed back from the table, creating distance. "It was Ward's orders," Teague said finally. "The captain said to clear that hospital tent, burn everything. Make it look like contamination control. But the woman, your wife, she saw us setting the fires before the sick folks were moved. Started shouting. Ward told her to shut up, she wouldn't, so he... Teague swallowed. He hit her with his rifle butt, then told us to make it look like an accident. The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Dakota's vision narrowed to a pinpoint, blood roaring in his ears. Across the table, Teague looked small and scared, a man who just confessed to covering up murder. "Where is Ward now?" Dakota asked, his voice deadly calm. "Transferred 3 weeks ago. Fort Union, I think. Maybe Stanton." Teague's hands trembled. "Look, I didn't kill her. I saw the medicine bag after, and it seemed a waste to bury good craft work. I needed the money." "You looted my wife's body for $2. I'm sorry. I swear I'm..." Dakota straightened. "You'll write a statement. Everything that happened that night. You'll sign it, and the sergeant here will witness it. Then I'm taking it to the commandant. Ward will have me shot. Ward murdered my wife. You covered it up. Be grateful I'm letting the Army handle this instead of Cheyenne justice." Teague looked like he might bolt, but the sergeant cleared his throat. "Best do what he says, Corporal. You've stepped in it deep enough already." It took an hour to get the statement written, signed, and witnessed. Dakota folded the paper carefully and tucked it inside his shirt next to Misai's medicine bag. Then he walked out of the sutler's tent into the twilight, leaving Teague slumped at the table with his head in his hands. Tomorrow he'd speak with the commandant. Tonight he'd make camp outside the fort and think about Captain Leland Ward, who'd killed a woman for trying to save lives. The gray gelding nickered softly when Dakota approached. He stroked the horse's neck, gathering himself. "One step closer," he murmured. "We're one step closer." In the distance, a bugle called "Evening Mess." Soldiers moved through the gathering dark like shadows. And somewhere to the north, Ward was living free, while Misai lay cold in the ground. But not for much longer. Dakota returned to Red Mesa 5 days after leaving, carrying Corporal Teague's signed confession and a letter from Fort McRae's commandant promising a full investigation into Captain Ward's actions. It wasn't justice yet, just the beginning of it, but it was more than he'd had before. He found Istas at Ayana's house, helping Greta hang laundry in the yard. His daughter spotted him first and came running, arms outstretched. Dakota caught her up, felt her skinny arms circle his neck. "You came back," she whispered. "Always." Over Istas's shoulder, Dakota saw Greta watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Longing, maybe, or grief for something lost. She turned away quickly, pinning a shirt to the line with practiced efficiency. That evening, after Istas fell asleep on her pallet, Dakota sat on Ayana's porch with his sister and told her everything. Ayana listened without interrupting her hands, busy with mending, even in the failing light. "So Ward killed Misai," she said finally. "And now the Army knows. They know. Whether they'll do anything." Dakota shrugged. "Officers protect officers. You'll keep pushing. Until there's justice or I'm dead." Ayana set down her sewing and looked at him directly. "And Istas, what happens to her if you get yourself killed chasing this?" The question struck deep. Dakota had no good answer. "I'll raise her," Ayana continued. "You know I will. But she's already lost her mother. Don't make her lose you too out of stubbornness." "This isn't stubbornness. It's..." "I know what it is." Ayana's voice gentled. "I know. But Misai would want Istas to have a father more than she'd want revenge." Before Dakota could respond, Greta appeared in the doorway. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should know there's a man watching the house. He's been standing across the street for the past hour." Dakota stood smoothly, hand moving to the knife at his belt. Description: tall beard, wears a bowler hat and suit that doesn't fit the territory. He keeps checking a pocket watch. Railroad man, Ayanna said grimly. They've been sniffing around all week trying to buy land for their expansion. Coulter. That's the one. Ephraim Coulter. Offered Cheyenne $50 for our property. When Cheyenne refused, Coulter said we might regret being uncooperative. Dakota's jaw tightened. The railroad had been pushing west for months, buying land cheap or forcing people out when they wouldn't sell. He'd heard stories from other pueblos, burned fields, poisoned wells, mysterious accidents that convinced holdouts to take the railroad's terms. I'll speak with him. Dakota. But he was already moving, crossing the yard in long strides. Across the street, silhouetted against the last light, Ephraim Coulter waited. Dakota approached directly. You have business here. Coulter smiled, teeth white in his beard. Just admiring the neighborhood, thinking about the future. This whole area, Red Mesa, the Pueblo lands, it's prime real estate for our expansion. Be ashamed to see it wasted on subsistence farming. Not wasted, used by people who were here first. Progress doesn't care about first. Coulter tucked his watch away. The railroad's coming through whether folks cooperate or not. Smart people take the money and move on. Stubborn people. He shrugged. Well, accidents happen. That a threat? Just stating facts. Coulter tipped his bowler. Think about it. We're prepared to be generous to willing sellers, less so to obstacles. He walked away, whistling boots, crunching in the gravel. Dakota watched him go, calculating odds and angles. The railroad wanted this land badly enough to threaten women and children. That meant they'd escalate, which meant he needed to be ready. The next morning brought trouble of a different kind. Dakota was working in Ayanna's vegetable garden, helping Istas pick squash, when they heard the train whistle. The Southern Pacific Line ran a mile west of Red Mesa, close enough that the sound carried on clear days. Usually the trains passed without incident. Today Istas's head snapped up at the whistle eyes, going wide. Papa, something's wrong. What? But she was already running barefoot through the garden rows toward the track. Dakota swore and chased after her, heart hammering. Istas was small but fast, ducking under fences and dodging through yards with the certainty of a child following instinct rather than sense. By the time he caught up, she was at the rail line, standing on the ballast stones and pointing. A quarter-mile east, the train rolled toward them. But something was wrong. Black smoke poured from beneath one of the freight car's flames, licking up the wooden sides. Even at this distance, Dakota could see people scrambling, hear shouts. And ahead of the train, maybe 30 yards, a figure stood on the tracks. Small, wearing a blue dress. Greta. Dakota's blood turned to ice. Istas, stay here. Don't move. He ran. Greta saw the train bearing down. She must have. The ground was shaking with it, but she seemed frozen arms wrapped around herself, staring at the locomotive like it was a ghost from her past. Dakota's legs pumped, covering ground, but the train was faster. 20 yards, 15. The engineer saw her slam the brakes. Steel screamed on steel, but momentum carried the burning train forward. 10 yards. Dakota hit Greta at a full sprint, wrapped both arms around her waist, and threw them both sideways into the ditch. They landed hard, Dakota's shoulder taking the impact. Half a second later, the train thundered past, so close the heat seared his face. Beneath him, Greta shook like she was coming apart. I saw him, she gasped. On the train, Leland. I saw Leland. The name froze Dakota solid. Leland, he repeated. Leland Ward. Greta's eyes focused on him, wild and terrified. My husband, my ex-husband, Captain Leland Ward. He was in the passenger car. He's here. He found me. The world tilted. Captain Leland Ward, the man who'd murdered Mise, was married to Greta Vogel. Behind them, the train ground to a halt, smoke still pouring from the freight car. Men shouted. Somewhere, Istus was crying. But Dakota couldn't move, couldn't process the impossible coincidence that had just revealed itself. "He'll kill me," Greta whispered. "He swore if I ever left, he'd hunt me down and kill me. That's why I ran. That's why I came west. But he found me. He always finds me." Dakota's mind raced. Ward was here, in Red Mesa. The man responsible for Misai's death was walking free looking for his runaway wife. And that wife had just handed back Misai's medicine bag with honest hands. "He won't touch you," Dakota said. The words came out harder than stone. "I promise, he won't." Greta laughed bitterly. "You don't know him. He's a captain. He has men authority. No one stands up to Leland Ward." "I'm not no one." Their eyes met. In Greta's, Dakota saw terror and resignation, the look of someone who'd given up hope long ago. But also something else, a tiny spark that hadn't quite died. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You don't even know me." "Because you gave back what was stolen. Because you're kind to my daughter. Because—" He paused, choosing honesty. "Because Captain Ward killed my wife, and I've been looking for him." Greta's breath caught. "The medicine bag. Your wife. You said she died during an incident with soldiers, led by Captain Ward." Sweet God. Greta closed her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. All this time I didn't know." Footsteps crunched in the gravel, the train engineer coming to check on them. Behind him, passengers were disembarking from the burning car, coughing smoke. And somewhere in that crowd, Leland Ward walked free. Dakota stood pulling Greta to her feet. "Can you walk?" She nodded. "Then we go back to Ayana's, quietly, and we figure this out. He'll find me. Let him try." They collected Istas, terrified, but unharmed, and made their way back through Red Mesa's dusty streets. Dakota's mind worked the angles. Ward was here, which meant he'd tracked Greta somehow. Maybe through railroad connections, maybe through simple questions in the right towns. Either way, the confrontation Dakota had been planning was now imminent. But first, he needed to know exactly what kind of man Ward was. Not just as a soldier who'd murdered Misai, but as a husband who'd driven Greta to flee across half the territory. "Tell me about him," Dakota said quietly as they walked. "Everything. Don't leave anything out." Greta's hands trembled, but her voice steadied as she began to talk. And with every word, Dakota's resolve hardened. This ended now. One way or another, Captain Leland Ward would answer for his crimes. All of them. They gathered in Ayana's kitchen after dark. Dakota, Greta, Ayana, and Cheyenne, who sat with his broken leg propped on a chair. The children were asleep in the back room, Istas curled protectively around Ayana's youngest. Outside, coyotes yipped in the distance. Greta sat at the table with a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking, hands wrapped around the warmth. "I met Leland in Kansas," she began. 3 years ago. I was working in a hotel mending linens. He was stationed at Fort Leavenworth, and he seemed charming, educated. He quoted poetry, brought me flowers. My parents were dead, I had no family, and he offered stability. Marriage. A future. She paused, staring into the coffee. "The first time he hit me was our wedding night. I'd folded his uniform wrong, creased the collar. He backhanded me across the room, then cried and apologized and swore it would never happen again." Her laugh was hollow. "It happened again the next week, and the week after that. Always when no one else could see. Always where bruises wouldn't show." Ayana reached across the table, covered Greta's hand with her own. "I learned to be quiet," Greta continued, "to anticipate his moods. If I was careful enough sometimes, I could go weeks without triggering his anger. But careful was never enough. He'd find reasons. The coffee was too strong. My dress was too plain. I'd looked at another man wrong. She met Dakota's gaze. He owned me. That's how he saw it. I was his property to manage as he saw fit. "Why not leave sooner?" Cheyenne asked, not unkindly. "Because he told me what would happen if I tried. He'd find me," he said. "No matter where I ran, how far I went. And when he found me, he'd kill me slow. Make it look like an accident. He'd done it before." Dakota's voice sharpened. "He told you he'd killed before." "Not directly, but he talked in his sleep sometimes after drinking. Names, dates, details that didn't make sense until I started piecing them together. That hospital fire in Red Mesa, I heard him mention it 6 weeks ago, laughing with another officer about clearing obstacles. About an Indian woman who wouldn't stop screaming, so they shut her up permanent." The room went deadly silent. "He killed Misai," Dakota said flatly. Greta nodded miserably. "I didn't know her name then. Didn't know it was your wife. But I knew Leland had murdered someone, and I knew if I stayed eventually, he'd kill me too. So I took the money I'd been hiding coins, scraped together from mending $1 at a time, and I ran. Bought a ticket to Santa Fe. That's where I met Corporal Teague, and he sold me the medicine bag. I thought it was just pretty craft work. I never imagined." "It's not your fault," Dakota said. "Isn't it? I was married to a murderer for 3 years. I helped him maintain his respectable image. You were surviving," Ayana interrupted firmly. "There's no shame in that." Greta's eyes filled. "He's here now. He saw me at the train. By morning, he'll know exactly where I'm staying. And then—" She didn't finish the sentence. Dakota leaned forward. "Teague gave me a signed confession detailing Ward's orders the night Misai died. The Fort McRae commandant is investigating. Ward doesn't know that yet, but once he does, he'll run or fight. Either way, his position is weaker than he thinks." "You're talking about challenging a U.S. Army captain," Cheyenne said. "Even with evidence that's dangerous. Military justice protects its own. Then we make sure the evidence is ironclad. Multiple witnesses, documentation, enough that Ward can't hide behind his rank." Dakota looked at Greta. "That means I need you to testify about what he told you, what you heard." Terror flashed across her face. "If I testify and he's acquitted, he won't be. Not with Teague's confession and your testimony combined." Dakota's voice gentled. "I know it's asking a lot. But Misai deserves justice, and so do you." Greta was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "All right, I'll testify. But only if you promise me something." "What?" "If Ward comes here, if he tries to take me, promise you won't get killed trying to stop him. Your daughter needs you alive more than I need rescuing." "That's not. Promise." Dakota studied her face, the bruised jaw, the exhausted eyes, the stubborn set of her chin. This was a woman who'd survived hell by being practical, who'd learned not to expect rescue. "I promise," he lied. Greta knew it was a lie. He could see it in the way her shoulders sagged. But she nodded anyway, accepting what she couldn't change. The next 3 days were tense. Ward didn't come to Ayana's house, but his presence hung over Red Mesa like a thunderhead. Townsfolk reported seeing a cavalry captain at the railroad camp asking questions about a German woman. Ephraim Coulter was seen meeting with him twice, both men looking conspiratorial. Dakota spent the time preparing. He visited Otto Brennan and bought ammunition. He spoke with Doc Morrison about what medical supplies might be needed. He checked every window and door at Ayana's house looking for weak points. And he watched Greta work. She moved through the house like a ghost, cleaning and mending with relentless efficiency. She taught Istas to darn socks, showing her the tiny, invisible stitches that made fabric whole again. She cooked meals that stretched their supplies, making something from nothing. She never complained, never asked for anything. On the third evening, Dakota found her on the roof. Ayana's house had a flat roof, accessed by an exterior ladder used for drying herbs and watching storms. Greta sat at the edge, feet dangling, staring at the sunset. Dakota climbed up and settled beside her, leaving space between them. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Haven't slept well in 3 years?" She glanced at him. "You shouldn't be up here. Istas will worry if she wakes and you're gone." "Ayana's with her." They sat in comfortable silence. Below, Red Mesa settled into evening lamps, being lit doors, being barred, the day's heat finally releasing its grip. "Tell me about your wife," Greta said quietly, "if it's not too painful." Dakota was surprised to find it wasn't. Misai was steady, like a river. You could trust her to be there, flowing in the right direction. She taught healing, knew every plant within 20 miles, and what it could cure. People came from other pueblos to learn from her. She sounds remarkable. She was. She also snored like a bear and couldn't cook meat without burning it. He smiled at the memory. But she made Istas laugh, made me laugh, made the world feel like it had order even when it didn't. You loved her very much." "I did. I do." He paused. "Losing her was like losing my compass. I've been walking in circles ever since, trying to find north." Greta nodded slowly. "I never loved Leland. Not really. At first I thought I might, but love requires trust, and I never trusted him. Even when he was kind, there was something underneath. Something broken." She pulled her shawl tighter. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever trust anyone again. If he damaged that part of me permanently. You trusted me enough to testify. That's different. That's practical, strategic." But her voice wavered. "Is it?" Their eyes met. In the fading light, Greta looked younger, less haunted. Then she broke the gaze and stood. "I should get back inside. Thank you for talking with me." "Anytime." She climbed down the ladder, leaving Dakota alone with the stars. Below, coyotes began their evening song. And somewhere in Red Mesa, Captain Leland Ward was planning his next move. Dakota touched Misai's medicine bag, tucked safely inside his shirt. "Soon," he whispered to her memory. "Soon, he'll answer for what he did." The stars offered no reply, but the wind from the west carried promise of storms, or justice, or both. The next morning, everything changed. Dakota woke to Istas shaking his shoulder. Papa, wake up. There's smoke." He was on his feet, instantly smelling it, thick chemical smoke that didn't come from cook fires. Through the window, he saw flames rising from the eastern side of town. "The mercantile." Ayana gasped, appearing in the doorway. "Otto's store is burning." They rushed outside with half the town. The fire had already consumed Brennan's mercantile and was spreading to the neighboring buildings, the assayer's office, the saloon. Men formed bucket chains from the town well, while women herded children to safety. Dakota joined the bucket line, passing water until his shoulders burned. Beside him, Cheyenne hobbled on his broken leg, refusing to stay back. The fire fought them every step, fed by dry wood and desert wind. It took 2 hours to bring it under control. When the flames finally died, Otto's store was a blackened skeleton. The buildings on either side were damaged, but salvageable. By some miracle, no one had died. Otto stood in the street, soot-blackened and hollow-eyed. "I locked up proper last night. Checked everything twice. This wasn't an accident." "Coulter," Ayanna said grimly. "This has his mark." As if summoned, Ephraim Coulter appeared, picking his way through the rubble. Behind him walked Captain Leland Ward in full uniform, saber at his belt. "Terrible tragedy," Coulter announced to the gathered crowd. "Fire's always a risk in these old wooden structures. Lucky the railroad's bringing modern building methods, brick and steel fireproof construction. Once we own this land, we'll rebuild properly, safely." "You did this," Otto snarled. "You burned me out because I wouldn't sell." "Careful with accusations, friend. Arson's a serious charge." Coulter's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But if you've changed your mind about selling, I'm sure we can reach an agreement." Ward stepped forward, hand resting on his saber hilt. "I'd advise cooperation. The Army takes a dim view of civil unrest, and making threats against railroad representatives qualifies. We'd hate to have to establish martial law." His gaze swept the crowd and landed on Greta. She'd frozen beside Ayanna's wagon, face white. Ward's expression shifted triumph mixed with cold fury. "There you are," he said pleasantly. "Greta, darling, we have so much to discuss." Dakota moved between them, smooth and deliberate. "The lady doesn't want to speak with you." Ward's eyes narrowed. "And you are the man asking you to leave." "I'm a captain in the United States Army, and that woman is my wife. I have every legal right. She left you. That makes her not your wife anymore by any law that matters." Ward's hand tightened on his saber. Around them, the crowd grew quiet, sensing violence. "I could have you arrested for interfering with military business," Ward said softly. "You could try." Dakota didn't move, didn't blink. "But first, you'd have to explain to your superiors why you're in Red Mesa instead of Fort Union, and why Corporal Teague gave a signed statement placing you at the scene of a murder 3 months ago." Ward's face went blank with shock. Behind him, Coulter tensed. "I don't know what lies you've been told," Ward began. "Not lies. Testimony. Witnesses. Evidence." Dakota took a step forward. "You killed my wife, Captain. You struck her with your rifle butt and left her to die, then ordered your men to cover it up. Misai was her name. You probably don't remember just another Indian woman in your way. But I remember. And now the Army remembers too." The silence was absolute. Ward's expression curdled into rage. "You have no proof." "I have Teague's confession. I have the medicine bag you had looted from her body. I have witnesses who saw your men that night. And I have your wife who heard you bragging about the murder." Dakota's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You're finished, Ward. Whether it's today or tomorrow, you're finished." For a heartbeat, Ward looked like he might draw his saber. Then Coulter touched his arm. "Not here," Coulter murmured. "Not in front of the whole town." Ward jerked away, but held himself in check. "This isn't over." "No," Dakota agreed. "It's not." The two men stared at each other across 10 feet of ash-strewn street. Then Ward turned and stalked away, Coulter hurrying after him. The crowd exhaled collectively. Greta appeared at Dakota's elbow, shaking. "You shouldn't have done that. You've made an enemy." "He was already my enemy. Now he knows it." "He'll kill you. He'll..." "Let him try." But even as he said it, Dakota's mind raced. Ward wouldn't come at him directly, not with witnesses and evidence stacking up. He'd be subtle, an accident maybe, or he'd go after the people Dakota cared about. His gaze found Ista standing with Ayanna. His daughter watched him with huge, solemn eyes. Dakota had just declared war on a U.S. Army captain, and the first rule of war was simple: protect what you couldn't afford to lose. He crossed to his daughter and knelt. "Istas, I need you to be very brave. Can you do that?" She nodded. Good, because things are going to get dangerous now, and I need you to stay close to Aunt Ayana, do exactly what she says, and trust me. Can you do that? Will you win? Istas asked. Against the bad man. Dakota touched her cheek. I'll do everything I can. That's all I can promise. That's enough. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, and prayed it would be. The storm hit 3 days later, not the metaphorical kind, but real thunder and lightning that turned the sky black at noon. Rain came down in sheets, flooding the arroyos and turning Red Mesa's streets to rivers of mud. Dakota was at Ayana's house when the first drops fell, checking the roof for leaks. Greta appeared below, calling up through the rain. There's a section over the kitchen, sagging waters coming through. He scrambled across the flat roof, found the weak spot where adobe had cracked. Rain poured through the gap, widening it with every passing second. Below, he could hear Ayana moving cookware to catch the water. I need canvas, he shouted. And rope. Greta disappeared, returned with both. Dakota lashed the canvas across the damaged section, but the wind fought him, tearing at the fabric. A gust caught the edge and ripped it from his hands. Here. Greta climbed the ladder, soaked to the skin, but determined. Hold this corner, I'll tie the other. They worked in tandem, fighting the storm. Water ran into Dakota's eyes, made the roof slick. Twice, he nearly lost his footing. But Greta moved with surprising confidence, knotting rope with practiced efficiency, anchoring the canvas against the wind. When the patch was secure, they collapsed against the low wall at the roof's edge, gasping. You've done this before? Dakota said. Army posts leak constantly. Leland made me repair them. She wiped water from her face. Never thought I'd be grateful for that. Lightning cracked overhead, close enough to feel in their chests. Thunder followed instantly. We should get down, Dakota said. But as he stood, his foot caught on the wet canvas. He stumbled arms, windmilling, heading for the roof's edge. Greta grabbed his belt with both hands, throwing her weight backward. They went down in a heap, tangled together, but safely on the roof. For a moment, neither moved, breathing hard. Thank you, Dakota managed. You saved me from a train. I saved you from a roof. Now we're even. But Greta was smiling, rain-soaked and exhausted, but genuinely amused. Dakota laughed, surprised it came so easy. Deal. They helped each other up and climbed down, dripping puddles across Ayana's floor. His sister took one look at them and pointed to the hearth. Both of you out of those wet clothes before you catch fever. Greta, there's a spare dress in the back room. Dakota, you know where your things are. They changed in awkward silence, acutely aware of each other in the small house. When Dakota emerged in dry buckskins, he found Greta wrapped in a blanket by the fire hair, loose and drying. She looked younger this way, less guarded. Istas climbed into her lap without asking, and Greta's arms came around her automatically. Tell us a story, Istas demanded. About Germany. Germany's not very exciting. Please. Greta glanced at Dakota, who nodded. She settled back, thinking. All right. When I was your age, my grandmother kept bees. Hundreds of them in wooden hives behind her cottage. Everyone said she was strange, talking to bees, singing them songs. But her honey was the best in the village, so they bought it anyway. Istas listened, transfixed. Ayana's children drifted closer, drawn by the story. One winter, a bear came down from the mountains, hungry and desperate. It smashed 3 hives before my grandmother heard the commotion. She grabbed her broom, just a broom, mind you, and marched out in her nightgown. Greta's voice shifted, becoming dramatic. The bear reared up, huge and snarling. and my grandmother pointed the broom at it and said, out of my garden, you thief." "What happened?" Istas breathed. The bear looked at her, looked at the hives, looked at this tiny old woman in a nightgown waving a broom, and it turned around and walked away. The broom scared it. No, my grandmother's absolute certainty that she was right and the bear was wrong that scared it. Greta's smile turned sad. She taught me that fear is contagious, but so is courage. If you act like you belong somewhere, like you have every right to take up space, sometimes the world believes you. "Did you believe it?" Dakota asked quietly. "For a long time, no, but I'm trying to learn." Her arms tightened around Istas. "Your daughter helps. She looks at me like I'm capable of anything." "You are," Istas said simply. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, something warm settled over the house, not quite family, not yet, but the beginning of it. The rain continued through the night. By morning, half of Red Mesa was flooded. The arroyo had overflowed, washing out the bridge to the South Road, which meant no one could leave town until the water receded, including Captain Ward. Dakota heard about the confrontation from Otto Brennan, who'd witnessed it at the railroad camp. Ward tried to commandeer a wagon, said he had urgent business in Santa Fe, Otto reported. But Coulter stopped him, said they had unfinished business here first. The two of them near came to blows. "Coulter's keeping him here," Ayanna said, "making sure Ward helps with whatever the railroad's planning." "Or Ward staying voluntarily," Dakota countered. "He knows I have evidence against him. If he runs, it looks like guilt. If he stays, he can claim he's facing the accusations head on, while actually eliminating witnesses," Greta said quietly. She stood by the window watching the rain. "That's how he thinks. Stay visible, play the wronged hero, and make problems disappear quietly. He won't get the chance." But even as Dakota said it, doubt crept in. Ward had resources, men, money, connections. And Dakota had a signed confession from a corporal that any military tribunal might dismiss as coerced. He needed more. Something undeniable. That afternoon, Doc Morrison came calling rain, dripping from his hat brim. "Dakota, I heard about your confrontation with Captain Ward." The doctor's face was grave. "I thought you should know I was at the hospital tent the night your wife died. I saw Ward there earlier in the evening, arguing with his lieutenant about something. And I heard him specifically tell his men to wait until the patients were evacuated before burning anything." Dakota went still. But Teague said Ward ordered them to set fires with people still inside. Then Teague lied, or Ward changed his orders after I left. Morrison pulled an envelope from his coat. I wrote down everything I remember from that night, dated and signed. Thought you might need it. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Misai saved my nephew during the fever outbreak. She sat with him for 3 days straight, giving him medicine, keeping him cool. He lived because of her." Morrison's voice thickened. "And because I'm tired of watching powerful men get away with murder." Dakota accepted the envelope. "Thank you. Be careful. Ward's dangerous, and he's got Coulter backing him. The railroad wants this land badly enough to burn for it." After Morrison left, Dakota read the statement twice. It corroborated parts of Teague's confession, but contradicted others, which meant someone was lying or Ward had deliberately created confusion to cover his tracks. Either way, it was more evidence, more weight on the scales. Greta found him at the kitchen table, papers spread before him. "What will you do?" she asked. "Keep building the case, every statement, every witness, until Ward can't hide. And if that's not enough, if the army protects him anyway, Dakota met her gaze. Then I'll find another kind of justice. Greta paled. You mean kill him? I mean, make sure he answers for what he did. One way or another. That makes you no better than... No. Dakota's voice was firm but not harsh. Killing in revenge is different than killing in self-defense. And if Ward comes at me or mine, it'll be self-defense. Greta stared at him, then slowly nodded. I understand. Do you? Yes. Because if I thought I could kill Leland and get away with it, I would have done it years ago. Her hands clenched. But I was too scared. Too convinced I'd fail. You're not scared. I'm terrified, Dakota admitted. But I'm more afraid of doing nothing. Outside, the storm finally began to break. Sunlight pierced the clouds in golden shafts, illuminating the flooded streets. And in that light, Red Mesa looked both washed clean and deeply scarred, a town trying to recover from forces beyond its control, much like the people inside it. That evening, Ward made his next move. Ephraim Coulter arrived at Ayanna's house with 2 railroad men and a legal document. Notice of eminent domain. Coulter announced, shoving the paper at Cheyenne. The railroad is claiming this property for expansion purposes. You have 3 days to vacate. You can't do that, Ayanna protested. This is Pueblo land protected by treaty. The treaty has exceptions for infrastructure development. The railroad qualifies. Coulter's smile was smug. We're offering fair market value $50. Take it or leave it, but either way, you're gone in 3 days. Dakota stepped forward. That document needs a judge's signature. Where is it? Coulter's smile faded. Judge Williamson signed it this morning. Williamson's in Santa Fe. The bridge is washed out. He couldn't have gotten here. He signed it before the storm. Convenient. Dakota plucked the document from Cheyenne's hands, examined it. This is dated yesterday. Before the storm. Which means Coulter knew the bridge would wash out and planned to serve this when no one could challenge it. Doesn't matter when it was dated, it's legal. It's fraud, and when the real law arrives, they'll see that. Without the court seal and the clerk's filing mark, that paper has no force in this territory. Coulter's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Indian. The railroad doesn't lose, ever. You'd be smart to take the money and walk away. We're not walking anywhere, Ayanna said fiercely. This is our home. Then you'll be removed. Forcibly, if necessary. Coulter gestured to his men. 3 days. That's all the warning you get. They left Boots squelching through mud. Dakota watched them go mine working. They'll come back, Cheyenne said, with more men, maybe soldiers. Ward? Greta whispered. Leland's helping them. That's why Coulter's keeping him here. He needs military backing. Dakota turned to his sister. Pack what you can carry. Just essentials. Be ready to leave tonight if we have to. Leave Dakota. This is our home. And it'll still be here after we prove that document's a forgery. But first, we need to stay alive. He looked at Greta. You too. Pack light, stay ready. Where will we go? The Pueblo. My mother's people. They'll shelter us while we fight this legally. But even as he planned, Dakota knew the truth. Ward and Coulter weren't interested in legality. They'd burned Otto's store as a warning. They'd flooded the town with fake paperwork. They wanted Red Mesa clear and empty, and they'd do whatever it took to achieve that. Which meant the real fight was coming. And when it did, Dakota needed to be ready. He spent the evening checking weapons, his rifle, the pistol he'd traded for 2 years ago, the knife that had been his father's. Istas watched from the doorway, silent and solemn. Are we going to fight? She asked. I hope not. But we're preparing just in case. Will Miss Greta come with us? If she wants to. She should. She's part of us now. Dakota looked at his daughter surprised. What makes you say that? Because she looks at you the way Mother did. Like you're the son. Out of the mouths of children, truth arrived without warning. Dakota had no answer, so he just pulled Istas close and held her while the night deepened outside. In the back room, Greta packed her carpet bag with shaking hands, trying not to think about Leland's face when he found her again. Trying not to hope that maybe, just maybe this time, she wouldn't have to face him alone. They came at midnight. Dakota woke to Istas shaking him, her small hand urgent on his shoulder. Papa, smoke. He smelled it immediately, thick chemical smoke that meant accelerant. Coal oil or kerosene splashed liberally and set alight. Everyone up! He grabbed his rifle, rushed to the window. Outside flames licked up the side of the stable, spreading fast. Ayanna appeared with her children, Cheyenne hobbling behind. Greta emerged last, already dressed carpetbag in hand. They're burning us out, Cheyenne said grimly. Get to the root cellar, Dakota ordered. Now. But Ayanna grabbed his arm. The horses, they're trapped in the stable. Dakota swore. 3 horses, their only transportation, worth more than money in this country. He couldn't let them burn. Stay here, he told Greta. Watch Istas. You can't go out there. But he was already moving, rifle in one hand, wet blanket grabbed from the wash line in the other. He hit the yard at a run. The stable was fully engulfed on the south side, flames climbing toward the roof. Inside, the horses screamed terrible, high-pitched sounds of animal terror. Dakota wrapped the wet blanket around himself and plunged through the door. Smoke choked him immediately. He dropped low, crawling toward the stalls. The first horse, Ayanna's mare, reared and kicked wild-eyed. Dakota grabbed the halter rope, jerked the stall door open, dragged the mare toward the exit. She fought every step, but he bullied her through the smoke and shoved her out into the yard. 1 down, 2 to go. The heat was intense now, searing his lungs. Dakota's eyes streamed tears. He found the second horse, Cheyenne's gelding, and repeated the process. This one followed easier, spooked but trusting. The third horse was his gray. The old gelding stood in the back stall, trembling but oddly calm. Come on, friend, Dakota gasped. We're leaving. He reached for the halter, and the roof beam above him cracked. Dakota looked up just in time to see burning timber falling. He threw himself sideways, but not fast enough. The beam caught his shoulder, drove him to the ground. Pain exploded through his chest and arm. The gray gelding bolted past him, found the exit on its own. Dakota tried to rise. His right arm wouldn't respond. The beam across his back was too heavy to shift alone, and the smoke was thickening, stealing his air. Black spots danced in his vision. This is it, he thought distantly. This is how it ends. Then hands grabbed him, small hands, strong despite their size. Greta. She braced her feet and heaved the beam upward just enough for Dakota to crawl free. Together they staggered toward the door, the stable collapsing behind them in a shower of sparks. They made it 3 steps into the yard before Dakota's legs gave out. I've got you, Greta said, taking his weight. Just a little further. Somehow they reached the house. Ayanna and Doc Morrison, summoned by someone, met them at the door. Morrison took one look at Dakota's arm and swore. Inside, now. They laid him on the kitchen table. Through the haze of pain, Dakota saw Morrison cutting away his shirt, revealing angry red burns across his shoulder and forearm. The smell of cooked flesh made his stomach turn. He went back for the horses. Ayanna said, voice thick with tears. Idiot. They're just horses. Our horses. Cheyenne countered. Worth the risk. Morrison worked in silence, cleaning burns, applying salve. Every touch was agony. Dakota gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out with children watching. You'll live, Morrison said finally. But you won't be using that arm for a week minimum, and you need to stay off your feet. Can't. Wards. Ward's not your problem right now. Healing is. Morrison's voice was firm. You want to fight, fine, but you fight smart when you're able, not when you're half dead from smoke and burns. Dakota wanted to argue, but exhaustion dragged at him like chains, pulling him under. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Greta's face, soot-stained and terrified, leaning over him. Rest, she whispered. I'll keep watch. He woke to sunlight and agony. His shoulder felt like it was still burning. Morrison had wrapped it in bandages soaked with something that smelled medicinal, comfrey and aloe maybe. His right arm was splinted and useless. Greta sat in a chair beside the bedhead, drooping in exhausted sleep. Someone Ayanna probably had draped a blanket over her shoulders. She looked impossibly young in the morning light, vulnerable despite everything she'd survived. Dakota shifted slightly, and pain lanced through his shoulder. He hissed through his teeth. Greta's eyes flew open. Don't move. Doctor said you need to stay still. How long was I out? All night. It's morning now. The stable's gone, but the horses are safe. No one else was hurt. Who set the fire? We don't know for sure, but Coulter's men were seen riding away right after it started. Her jaw tightened. This was meant to drive us out. Did it work? Ayanna says no. Cheyenne agrees. They're staying. Greta paused. I told them they were fools. Despite everything, Dakota smiled. Probably, but we're stubborn fools. So, I've noticed. She poured water from a pitcher. Here, drink. He managed a few sips before exhaustion pulled at him again. But before he slept, he caught Greta's wrist with his good hand. Thank you, he said, for pulling me out. Her fingers tightened on his. You saved me from a train. I saved you from a fire. Now we're really even. I don't think it works that way. Then I guess we'll keep saving each other until we figure it out. Their eyes held. Something passed between them, understanding maybe, or the beginning of trust, or something deeper that neither was ready to name. Then Greta pulled away gently. Sleep. You need strength for what's coming. Dakota wanted to ask what she meant, but sleep claimed him first, dragging him down into darkness, where the pain couldn't follow. And in the kitchen, Greta sat alone, sharpening a kitchen knife with slow, deliberate strokes, and thinking about Captain Leland Ward. 2 days later, Dakota could stand without the room spinning. His arm was still useless, but he could walk and think and plan, which meant it was time to act. Ephraim Coulter made his move first. He arrived at noon with 6 men, railroad thugs with gun belts and hard eyes. Behind them, in full uniform, came Captain Leland Ward. The message was clear: last chance. Dakota met them in the yard, Greta at his side. Ayanna and Cheyenne stood on the porch, Cheyenne holding his rifle casually but ready. Your 3 days are up, Coulter announced. Time to vacate. That notice was fraudulent, Dakota said. Judge Williamson never signed it. We checked. Coulter's smile thinned. Doesn't matter. We're taking possession today with or without your cooperation. Try it and find out what happens. The railroad men shifted hands, moving toward weapons, but Ward raised a hand, stopping them. Let's be civilized about this, the captain said smoothly. He looked at Greta, and his expression shifted to something possessive and cold. Hello, wife. You've led me on quite a chase. I'm not your wife anymore. Greta said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I left you. That makes the marriage void. Not legally. And even if it were, you stole property that belongs to me, jewelry money. That makes you a thief. Ward's smile was razor sharp. Come quietly and I'll forget the theft charges. Resist and I'll have every lawman from here to Kansas looking for you. She's not going anywhere with you, Dakota said. Ward turned to him, feigning surprise. And you are? The man you murdered my wife in front of. The man who has signed testimony placing you at the scene. The man who's going to see you hang. Ward's mask cracked just for a second. Then he laughed, cold and humorless. Testimony from a disgraced corporal facing charges himself that'll never hold in court. And even if it did, you're assuming anyone cares about one dead Indian woman. He leaned forward. They don't. No one does. Dakota's good hand moved to his knife. Greta caught his wrist, holding him back. He wants you to attack, she whispered. Don't give him the excuse. Ward caught the exchange and smirked. Listen to her. She knows what happens to people who cross me. You mean like the people you've beaten? Greta's voice rose. The women you've killed. How many, Leland? How many murders have you gotten away with? Careful, dear. Your imagination's running wild. Is it? Then explain Misai. Explain the hospital fire. Explain the medicine bag you had looted from her corpse. For the first time, Ward looked genuinely rattled. His gaze cut to Coulter, then back to Greta. You don't know what you're talking about? I know you talked in your sleep. I know you bragged about clearing obstacles to your drinking partners. I know. Ward moved faster than Dakota expected, crossed the yard in 3 strides, and backhanded Greta across the face. She went down hard, blood blooming from her split lip. Dakota's knife was out before he consciously chose to draw it. Touch her again, he said quietly, and I'll gut you where you stand. Ward's hand moved to his saber. Around them, the railroad men drew weapons, pistols, and rifles, a small arsenal. But from the porch, Cheyenne cocked his rifle. From the house, Ayanna appeared with a shotgun. And from the stable, Otto Brennan emerged with a Winchester, flanked by Doc Morrison and 3 other townsmen. The odds had just shifted. Looks like we're at an impasse, Dakota said. You shoot, we shoot. A lot of people die. Or you leave and we settle this legally. Coulter's face had gone red. You're threatening railroad representatives and a U.S. Army officer? That's a hanging offense. Self-defense isn't a crime. And you started this by trying to steal land and assault a woman. I'm taking my wife home. Ward snarled. That's my legal right. Actually, Doc Morrison called from the stable, it's not. I've been reading territorial law. A wife who can prove cruelty has grounds for divorce under territorial law. And Greta's injuries are well documented. Ward turned on him. You're making a very stupid mistake, Doctor. Maybe. But it's the right mistake. For a long moment, no one moved. The yard was silent except for the wind and the sound of hammers cocking. Then Ward smiled, cold and calculating. Fine. Keep the woman. Keep this worthless property. But understand something, I'm not going away. I have resources, connections, patience. And sooner or later, everyone you care about will pay for this insult. He turned to Coulter. We're leaving. For now. Coulter looked like he might argue, but something in Ward's expression stopped him. The railroad men backed away slowly, weapons still drawn. Ward mounted his horse with parade ground precision and rode off without looking back. When they were gone, Dakota went to Greta. She was sitting up, holding her bleeding lip, eyes fierce. I'm sorry, he said. I should have stopped him faster. You stopped him. That's what matters. She let him help her stand. Thank you for standing up to him. He's not done. You know that. I know. But for the first time in 3 years, I'm not facing him alone. She glanced at the townspeople gathered in support. None of us are. That night they held a council in Ayanna's kitchen. Otto Morrison, Cheyenne, Ayanna, Dakota, and Greta mapping their next moves. Ward won't attack openly again, Morrison said. Not with witnesses. He'll be subtle. An accident, Greta agreed. That's his style. Something that looks natural but removes the problem. So we watch each other's backs, Otto said. No one goes anywhere alone. We document everything. And we get word to Fort Union about Ward's actions. I'll ride out tomorrow, Dakota said. Not with that arm, you won't. Ayanna frowned. Send someone else. Otto can go, Morrison suggested. He's got business in Santa Fe anyway. Can stop at Fort Union on the way. Otto nodded. I'll leave at dawn. They planned for another hour covering contingencies and backup plans. But underneath the strategy, Dakota felt exhaustion pulling at him. His arm ached, his head pounded, and the weight of protecting everyone was crushing. Greta found him later sitting on the porch in the darkness. You should be resting, she said. Can't sleep. She settled beside him close enough that their shoulders almost touched. What are you thinking about? How to end this without anyone else dying. You can't control that. Ward's going to do what Ward does. Then I'll stop him. Dakota's voice was flat. Permanently, if necessary. Greta was quiet for a long moment. If you kill him, you'll hang. Even in self-defense, they'll find a way to convict you. Officers are too valuable. Maybe. But Istis will be safe. You'll be safe. That's worth it. No. Her hand found his squeezed. It's not. Because Istis needs her father alive, not martyred. And She stopped, swallowed. I need you alive too. Dakota turned to look at her. In the moonlight, her face was pale, the bruise on her jaw dark against her skin. But her eyes were clear and determined. Why? He asked. Because you're the first person in years who's made me feel like I'm worth protecting, worth saving. And if you die for me, that feeling dies too. Greta, I know you loved your wife. I know you're doing this partly for her. But it's not just about her anymore, is it? It's about stopping Ward before he hurts anyone else. About justice, not revenge. Justice and revenge look pretty similar from where I'm standing. Maybe. But one destroys you, and one sets you free. She leaned her head on his shoulder carefully, like she was afraid he'd pull away. Choose freedom, Dakota. Please. He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know if he could separate justice from vengeance anymore. They'd braided together so tightly in his heart that pulling them apart might unravel him completely. But Greta's weight against his side was warm and solid and real. A reminder that life continued, that there were people still worth protecting, reasons to keep fighting beyond rage and grief. I'll try, he said finally. That's all I can promise. That's enough. They sat together in the darkness, two broken people holding each other up, while above them the stars wheeled through their ancient patterns, indifferent to human suffering, but beautiful nonetheless. And somewhere in Red Mesa, Captain Leland Ward planned his next move, unaware that his time was running out. Otto Brennan never made it to Fort Union. They found his body 3 miles outside Red Mesa, lying in a wash with his skull crushed and his horse gone. Doc Morrison examined the scene and declared it a murder. The angle of the wound wasn't consistent with a fall. Someone came at him from behind, Morrison said grimly. Hit him with something heavy. Took his horse and left him for the buzzards. Dakota stood over the body rage and guilt warring in his chest. Otto had been riding for help at Dakota's suggestion, which made his death Dakota's fault. Ward, Greta said quietly. She stood apart from the group arms wrapped around herself. This is Leland's doing. Can't prove it, Cheyenne said. Ward's been at the railroad camp all morning, witnesses say. Coulter, too. Then they hired someone. It's what they do, keep their hands clean, while others do the killing. They buried Otto that afternoon in the Pueblo cemetery next to Misai. The whole town turned out, standing silent in the heat. Dakota watched the dirt cover the coffin and felt the weight of responsibility pressing down like a physical thing. How many more people would Ward kill before this ended? After the funeral, Marshal Clay Potter arrived from Santa Fe, summoned by telegram. Before Otto's death, finally free to travel now that the bridge was repaired. Potter was a solid man in his 50s, with a reputation for fairness and little patience for corruption. He listened to Dakota's testimony read, Teague's confession, examined Doc Morrison's statement, and interviewed Greta for 2 hours. When he finished, his expression was troubled. I believe you, he said. All of you. But belief isn't evidence that'll hold in territorial court. Teague's confession is tainted. He's facing charges himself, gives him motive to lie. Morrison's statement is circumstantial, and Mrs. Ward's testimony. He glanced at Greta apologetically. A wife's testimony against her husband isn't admissible. Then what good is the law? Dakota demanded. The law's designed to protect the innocent. Sometimes it protects the guilty too. Potter sighed. Look, I can arrest Ward for questioning. Hold him while we investigate, but without solid evidence, he'll walk inside a week. And then he'll disappear, Greta said. Transfer to another post, change his name. I've seen it happen before. Officers who commit crimes just get shuffled somewhere else. So we need better evidence, Ayanna said. Something undeniable. Like what? Cheyenne asked. We've got testimony, we've got Otto's murder, we've got a pattern of violence. What more do we need? A witness to the actual murder, Potter said. Someone who saw Ward kill your wife, Dakota, or physical evidence directly linking him to the crime. Misai's been dead 3 months. Any physical evidence is long gone. Potter spread his hands helplessly. Then I'm sorry. I'll do what I can, but without more, my hands are tied. He left to set up temporary headquarters in the ruined mercantile, leaving them to figure out their next move. That night, Dakota sat with Misai's medicine bag, running his fingers over the familiar quill work. Somewhere in Red Mesa, Ward walked free. Somewhere, Otto's killer collected his payment. Somewhere, Coulter and the railroad plotted their next land grab. And Dakota was out of legal options. I know what you're thinking, Greta said from the doorway. Don't. You don't know what I'm thinking. Yes, I do. You're thinking about going after Ward yourself, forcing a confrontation, making him confess or die trying. She crossed the room, knelt beside his chair. And it'll get you killed or arrested. Either way, Istas loses her father. Then what do you suggest? We've tried law. We've tried evidence. We've tried everything short of. We make him come to us. Greta interrupted. On our terms, where we control the situation. Dakota studied her face. What did you have in mind? Leland wants me. More than he wants revenge on you, more than he wants this land. He's obsessed with owning me, controlling me. That's his weakness. She took a breath. So we use it. We let him think he can take me. Set a trap. Absolutely not. I'm not using you as bait. I'm volunteering. there's a difference. Greta, listen to me. Her hands gripped his knees, urgent. I've been running from Leland for months. Years if you count the time I spent married to him waiting for courage. I'm done running. If we're going to end this, let's end it. Together. He'll hurt you. He'll try. But this time I'll be ready. And so will you. They argued for an hour, but Greta was immovable. Finally, Dakota agreed reluctantly with more conditions than he could count. They spent the next day planning. Marshal Potter was brought into the scheme, along with Doc Morrison and Cheyenne. The plan was simple. Greta would be seen leaving Red Mesa alone, heading for the old line shack at Devil's Fork. Ward would hear about it. They'd make sure he did and come after her. Dakota and the others would be waiting. It's dangerous, Potter warned. If Ward brings men, we'll be outnumbered. He won't, Greta said confidently. This is personal for him. He'll want to do it himself, savor it. That's who he is. And if you're wrong, then we fight, and we make sure he doesn't leave Devil's Fork alive. Potter looked uncomfortable, but didn't argue further. They were past the point of legal niceties now. 2 days later, they set the trap. Greta packed her carpetbag loudly, made sure half the town saw her buy provisions. She told the stable keeper she was leaving, couldn't take the violence anymore. She let herself be seen crying, looking desperate. By evening, the whole territory probably knew Greta Vogel Ward was heading into the hills alone. Dakota watched her ride out at sunset, his stomach tight with fear. His arm was still weak, barely healed, but he could shoot left-handed if needed. He gave Greta a 10-minute head start, then followed with Cheyenne, Potter, and Morrison. They reached Devil's Fork as full dark fell. The line shack was a crude building used by shepherds in spring, empty now. Greta had lit a lamp inside, making herself visible. Dakota and the others took positions in the rocks above, rifles ready, and waited. An hour passed. 2. Maybe he's not coming, Morrison whispered. He'll come, Dakota said. And he did. Ward appeared like a ghost, on foot, having left his horse somewhere in the dark. He approached the shack carefully, checking angles, looking for traps. Dakota held his breath, finger on the trigger. Ward reached the door, pushed it open. Hello, wife. Inside, Greta's voice was steady. Leland, did you really think you could run from me, that I wouldn't find you? I hoped, but I'm done hoping. Smart girl, makes this easier. Footsteps, creaking boards. You've caused me a lot of trouble. Cost me Allies' reputation. The Army's asking questions I don't appreciate answering. All because you couldn't be a proper wife. I was a proper wife. You were an improper husband. A crack, flesh on flesh. Greta's cry of pain. Dakota nearly broke cover then, but Cheyenne's hand on his shoulder held him back. Wait, the pressure said. Wait for the confession. You're going to die here. Ward continued, voice calm. An accident. You fell in the dark, broke your neck. Tragic. And with you gone, there's no testimony linking me to that Indian woman's death. No witness to my past mistakes. I can transfer somewhere, clean start over. You mean murder more women? If they get in my way, yes. Ward laughed, cold and empty. You should have stayed in Kansas, Greta. Should have learned your place. But you always were too stubborn for your own good. Just like that squaw in Red Mesa wouldn't shut up, wouldn't stop interfering. Had to put her down like a rabid dog. Dakota's vision went red. You killed me, Cy. Greta said loud, clear for the witnesses outside. Obviously. Hit her with my rifle butt, watched her drop. Then had my men move the body, make it look like she fell during the panic. Clean, simple, effective. Ward's voice moved closer. And now you're going to join her. No, Dakota said, stepping into the doorway. She's not. Ward spun, hand moving to his saber. But Dakota already had his pistol raised, and behind him 3 rifles pointed at the captain's back. Marshal Potter, U.S. Territorial Marshal. Potter announced, stepping forward. Captain Leland Ward, you're under arrest for the murder of Mise and the attempted murder of Greta Vogel Ward. We have 3 witnesses to your confession. Drop your weapon. Ward's face cycled through emotions, shock rage calculation. His hand tightened on the saber hilt. Don't, Dakota said quietly. I'm begging you, give me an excuse. For a moment, Ward looked like he might draw anyway. Then his shoulders sagged. I want a lawyer, and I want this arrest challenged. You entrapped me. We took down your confession in writing witnessed and signed by 3 men. Potter corrected. Totally legal. Now drop the weapon. Ward's saber clattered to the floor. They bound his hands with rope and marched him back to Red Mesa under guard. In the shack, Greta stood with her face swelling from Ward's blow, but her eyes fierce and bright. Is it over? She asked. Almost, Dakota said. One more step. The trial came 2 weeks later in Santa Fe, presided over by a territorial judge known for his dislike of corrupt officers. Potter presented the evidence, Teague's confession, Morrison's statement, Greta's testimony about Ward's sleeping confessions, and the witness confession at Devil's Fork. The defense argued entrapment challenged Greta's credibility and claimed Ward had been speaking hypothetically. The jury took 4 hours to return a verdict guilty of murder and attempted murder. The judge sentenced Ward to hang. Dakota was in the courtroom when the sentence was read. He watched Ward's face go gray, watched the man who'd killed Mise finally understand that consequences existed. Outside, Greta waited. When Dakota emerged, she searched his face. How do you feel? She asked. Empty, he admitted. I thought there'd be satisfaction, closure. But mostly I just feel tired. That's normal. Revenge doesn't heal the wound, it just stops the bleeding. Is that what this was, revenge? No. This was justice. She took his hand. And now we can start healing. They walked through Santa Fe's plaza together, past vendors and children playing. The sun was setting, painting the adobe walls gold. And for the first time in months, Dakota felt like he could breathe. What happens now? He asked. Greta smiled. Now we go home. To Istas, to your sister, to Red Mesa. And we build something new. Together, if you'll have me. Dakota stopped walking, turned to face her fully. I don't have much to offer. A small house, a daughter who barely speaks a life that's mostly hard work and scraping by. That's more than I had yesterday, and infinitely more than I deserve. You deserve everything. Their eyes held. Around them, Santa Fe lived and breathed a city of second chances and new beginnings. Then yes, Greta said softly. Together. Dakota kissed her, gentle and careful, mindful of her healing lip. She leaned into him, solid and real and alive. When they broke apart, both were smiling. We should get back, Dakota said. Istas will worry. Let her worry a little longer. I want to enjoy this moment. So they stood in the plaza as the sun set 2 survivors holding each other up, while above them the sky burned gold and crimson, beautiful and temporary and worth witnessing. Because that was life, Dakota realized. Beautiful and temporary and worth fighting for, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. They should have known it wouldn't end clean. Ward escaped the night before his scheduled execution, overpowered a guard, stole a horse, and vanished into the territory. Marshal Potter organized a manhunt, but Ward had military training and desperation on his side. The trail went cold at the Rio Grande. He's coming back, Greta said when they got the news. Her face was pale but unsurprised. He won't let this end with him running. His pride won't allow it. Then we'll be ready, Dakota said. They returned to Red Mesa under armed escort Potter and 4 deputies riding alongside. The town had changed in their absence. Coulter's railroad camp had been raided by territorial marshals revealing forged documents and evidence of arson. Coulter himself was in custody in Santa Fe. The land grab was finished, but Ward remained loose, a ghost in the desert. 3 days passed. Dakota kept Istas close, never letting her out of sight. Greta moved through the house like a caged animal jumping at shadows. Everyone waited for the other shoe to drop. It dropped at dawn on the 4th day. Dakota woke to silence, the wrong kind of silence, too deep and absolute. He reached for Istas's pallet. Empty. Panic hit like a fist. Istas! Greta appeared in the doorway. What's wrong? She's gone. They tore through the house searching. Ayana's children were safe, still sleeping. But Istas had vanished like smoke. On the kitchen table, they found the note written in precise military script. You took everything from me. Now I take what you love. Come to Devil's Throat alone, or the child dies. You have until noon. Ward had Istas. Dakota's vision tunneled. His hands shook with rage, so pure it felt like fire in his veins. I'm going after her, he said. Not alone, you're not. Greta was already pulling on her boots. If Leland wants a fight, we'll give him one. But we do it smart. There's no time for smart. He has my daughter. Then we move fast and smart. She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her eyes. I know Leland. I know how he thinks. If you go alone, he'll kill you both. But if we bring help, plan this right, we can end it. Dakota wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to ride for Devil's Throat and tear Ward apart with his bare hands. But Greta's steady gaze anchored him. What's your plan? He asked. They gathered Potter, Morrison, and Cheyenne in urgent conference. Devil's Throat was a box canyon 10 miles east, steep walls, single entrance, no escape routes. Perfect for an ambush. Ward knows you'll come, Potter said. He'll be positioned with high ground, clear lines of fire. Probably figures to pick you off before you get close. So we don't give him that chance, Greta said. I know Leland's patterns. He'll want to monologue, explain why he's won. That's his weakness. He needs the validation. She turned to Dakota. You ride in like he asked, alone and unarmed. Keep him talking. The rest of us circle around through the rocks, come at him from behind. Using me as bait. Using his arrogance against him. Greta's voice softened. I won't let him hurt Istas. I swear it. Dakota looked at each of them, Potter with his marshal's star, Morrison with his doctor's resolve, Cheyenne with his quiet strength, Greta with her fierce determination. His people. His makeshift army. All right, he said. We do it your way. They rode hard for Devil's Throat, arriving with an hour to spare. Dakota approached the canyon alone, on his gray gelding hands, clearly visible, no weapons showing. Behind him, the others split off into the rocks to flank. The canyon walls rose like broken teeth, red stone stained darker by ancient water. At the far end, Ward stood on a ledge with Istas beside him. The girl was bound, but unharmed, her eyes huge and terrified. Papa, she called. I'm here, little one. It's going to be all right. Ward laughed. Is it because from where I stand, you're about to watch your daughter die unless you do exactly what I say? Let her go. Your fight is with me. Oh, my fight's with everyone. You, your people, this entire worthless territory. But especially you. Ward's expression twisted. You destroyed me. My career, my reputation, my future. All because of one dead squaw who didn't know her place. Her name was Misai, and she was worth 10 of you. Was she then? Prove it. Kneel. Beg me for your daughter's life. Dakota dismounted slowly. His instinct was to refuse to spit defiance. But Istas's terrified face made the choice simple. He knelt in the dust. Please, he said, let my daughter go. Take me instead. I'm the one you want. Ward's smile was vicious. Oh, I'll take you. But first, I want you to understand something. You think you won? But you didn't. I'm still here. I'm still in control. And even if I hang, I'm taking your legacy with me. Your daughter will die knowing her father couldn't save her. Leland, stop. Everyone turned. Greta stood at the canyon entrance, hands raised, no weapons visible. Ward's face contorted. You were supposed to die at Devil's Fork. I'm harder to kill than you thought. She walked forward slowly. It's over, Leland. The marshals are coming. You can't win this. I don't need to win. I just need to destroy. Ward drew his pistol, aimed it at Istas. Starting with... The shot came from the rocks. Chayton's rifle cracked like thunder. The bullet struck Ward's shoulder, spun him sideways. His pistol discharged into the air. Then everything happened at once. Dakota lunged forward, covering the distance to the ledge in seconds. Ward recovered faster than expected, knife appearing in his good hand. They collided, grappling Ward's blade, seeking flesh. Above, Istas kicked free of her bonds, ran right into Greta's arms. Greta swept her up, carried her toward safety. On the ledge, Dakota and Ward fought with desperate savagery. Ward was trained precise, deadly. But Dakota fought with the fury of a father protecting his child. He caught Ward's knife hand, twisted, heard bone crack. Ward screamed, stumbled backward. The ledge crumbled beneath his feet. For one suspended moment, Ward hung in space, eyes wide with shock. Then he fell silent into the canyon floor below. The impact was final. Dakota stood at the edge, breathing hard, staring down at Ward's broken body. After everything, the chase, the evidence, the trial, the escape, it ended here with gravity and stone. Potter appeared beside him. He's dead. I know. You all right? Dakota turned away from the ledge. Below, Greta held Istas, both of them crying. His daughter looked up, saw him, and screamed, Papa! He climbed down carefully, every muscle trembling with exhaustion and relief. When he reached them, Istas threw herself into his arms so hard it nearly knocked him over. I was so scared, she sobbed. He said terrible things. I know, but you're safe now. It's over. Promise. Promise. He held his daughter while Greta wrapped her arms around both of them. They stood like that for a long time, 3 survivors holding each other up in the shadow of the canyon, while above them the sun climbed higher and the desert wind erased footprints in the sand. Later, Potter would write his report. Doc Morrison would examine Ward's body. Chayton would lead the horses home. But for now, in this moment, they simply breathed and held each other and let the terror drain away like water into thirsty ground. It was over. Captain Leland Ward would never hurt anyone again. And in Red Mesa, life could finally begin again. 6 months later, Red Mesa looked different. The railroad had bypassed the town after Coulter's arrest, leaving the Pueblo lands intact. Otto's Mercantile had been rebuilt by community effort, now run by his nephew, who'd come from Colorado to take over the business. The scars of the fire remained, but were fading, covered by new growth and fresh whitewash. Dakota stood in front of the small house he'd built on the edge of town, 2 rooms expandable with a real floor and glass windows. It wasn't much, but it was his. Theirs. Papa, can I have chickens? He turned to find Istas holding a basket of eggs, her face hopeful. She'd started talking again after Ward's death, slowly at first, then in torrents, as if making up for lost time. "Ask Miss Greta. She's the one who'll be feeding them." "She already said yes. I'm asking you for permission to ask you officially." Istas grinned, displaying the gap where she'd lost a tooth last week. "Then officially, yes. 3 chickens, no more." 6, 4. Deal. She scampered off victorious in negotiation. Greta emerged from the house wiping flour from her hands. "I heard that. You realize 4 chickens become 8 chickens very quickly. Then we'll have eggs to sell. Diverse income streams." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "How's the sewing?" "I finished Mrs. Chen's dress and started on the shirts for the Murphy boys. We're doing all right. Not rich, but comfortable." Comfortable's good. They'd married in October, a quiet ceremony at the Pueblo with Ayanna's family, and half the town in attendance. Marshall Potter had given Greta away, since she had no family of her own. Istas had stood between them during the vows, holding their hands, making it clear this was a 3-person union. The nightmares still came sometimes for all of them. Dakota would wake reaching for Misai, disoriented by Greta's different breathing. Greta would flinch at sudden sounds, expect blows that never came. Istas would cry in her sleep, calling for her mother. But they worked through it together. Doc Morrison said time would help. Dakota wasn't sure he believed in time anymore, but he believed in effort, in showing up every day, doing the work, building something new from the wreckage. "I'm going to the cemetery," he said. "Want to come?" Greta nodded. They walked together through town, Istas running ahead to pick wildflowers. At the Pueblo cemetery, they stopped at Misai's grave, freshly tended with stones, arranged in the pattern of her clan. Dakota knelt, placed sage and sweet grass on the earth. "It's me again," brought the family. Beside him, Greta laid her own offering, a small cloth packet of lavender, the German tradition. Istas added her wildflowers, arranging them carefully. "Hello, First Mother," Istas said solemnly. She'd taken to calling Misai, that distinguishing her from Greta without erasing her. "I got 4 chickens today. Papa said yes. I'm going to name one after you." Dakota's throat tightened. Beside him, Greta's hand found his. "I wish you could have met her," Dakota said to Misai's grave. "Greta, I mean. I think you would have liked her. She's strong like you were. Stubborn. Kind even when the world isn't." He paused. "I hope you understand. About moving forward, I'll never forget you. But I can't stay frozen either." The wind moved through the graveyard, carrying the scent of sage and desert bloom. Dakota chose to interpret it as blessing. They stayed a while longer, then walked home as the sun set. At the house, Ayanna was waiting with Cheyenne and their children. "Thought you might want company for dinner," Ayanna said. "I brought stew." "And I brought cards," Cheyenne added, grinning. "Time to win back the money you took last week." The evening passed in laughter and food and the comfortable chaos of family. Istas played with her cousins, their shrieks echoing off the walls. Greta and Ayanna bent their heads over a sewing pattern, debating stitch placement. Dakota and Cheyenne played cards with theatrical seriousness, each accusing the other of cheating. It was ordinary, mundane, exactly what they'd fought for. Later, after everyone had gone home and Istas was asleep, Dakota and Greta sat on their small porch, watching the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Greta asked. "Helping me that day in the mercantile, everything that came after?" "No." "Do you? Returning the medicine bag? Never. It brought me to you." She leaned against him. "I keep thinking about what my life would be if I hadn't. If I'd kept the bag, moved on, never known about Mise or Ward or any of it, I'd probably be in California by now, living in some boarding house, mending clothes for strangers. Would that be so bad? It would be lonely, and lonely is worse than hard. Dakota understood that. Misai's death had taught him the difference. Hardship could be endured, but loneliness was corrosive, eating away at you from the inside. "Thank you," he said, "for staying, for taking a chance on this mess. We're not a mess. We're a work in progress." She smiled. "Besides, I like it here. Red Mesa feels like home. No place ever felt like home before. Not even Kansas. Kansas was just a place I survived. This is different." She gestured at the darkened town, the Pueblo lands beyond the mountains, silhouetted against the stars. "This is where I belong." The words hung between them, simple and profound. Inside, Ista stirred in her sleep, mumbled something about chickens. They both smiled. "We should sleep," Greta said. "Tomorrow's market day. We'll be up early." But neither of them moved. The night was too beautiful, the peace too hard won to abandon quickly. "Do you think about her?" Greta asked quietly. "Mise? Every day. But it's different now. Less like an open wound, more like a scar." Dakota paused, choosing words carefully. "I loved her completely. Still do in a way. But I love you too. Differently, but just as real. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. Love isn't finite. It grows to accommodate what we need." Greta's hand found his. "I think that's what frightened Leland most, that love could be shared, expanded, offered freely. He only understood ownership. He's gone now. I know. But some nights I still expect to see him standing in the dark waiting. The fear takes time to unlearn. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "I know that too." They sat a while longer, then went inside. The house was small but warm, filled with the evidence of living Istas's drawings on the wall, Greta's sewing basket by the hearth, Dakota's tools in the corner. Signs of a life being built, piece by careful piece. In the months that followed, Red Mesa continued its recovery. The railroad left them alone, having learned that some communities fought back. New families moved in, attracted by cheap land and the Pueblo's reputation for accepting outsiders. The town grew slowly, organically, without the violence that had marked its recent past. Dakota found work as a mediator again, helping settle disputes between Pueblo and territorial interests. Greta's sewing business flourished. She had a gift for fitting clothes to bodies and word spread. Ista started school in the fall, where she excelled at reading and caused trouble in arithmetic. They were by all measures ordinary, and that ordinariness was a gift beyond price. On Istas's 8th birthday, they held a party in the yard, children everywhere. Ayana's family, Doc Morrison, Marshall Potter visiting from Santa Fe, half the town stopping by with gifts and well wishes. Dakota stood at the edge of the celebration, watching his daughter laugh, and felt something unlock in his chest. Joy, uncomplicated and pure. Greta appeared beside him, dust in her hair from chasing children. "What are you thinking?" "That this is what Misai wanted. Not revenge or justice or any of that. Just this Istas growing up happy and loved. We're giving her that. We are." They watched the party together, hands loosely linked. The sun beat down, relentless as always, but the heat felt less oppressive now. Or maybe they just adapted, learned to thrive in harsh conditions. That night, after Istas finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Dakota and Greta lay in bed, listening to the desert settle into darkness. "I'm pregnant," Greta said into the silence. Dakota's breath stopped. "Are you sure?" Doc Morrison confirmed it yesterday. "I'm about 3 months along." 1,000 emotions crashed through him. Joy, terror, wonder, grief, that Mise would never meet this child. He pulled Greta close hand, splayed across her still flat stomach. "How do you feel?" he managed. Terrified, excited, both at once. She twisted to look at him. "Is it too soon? I know it's only been a year since." "It's not too soon. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. It just happens, and we adapt." He kissed her gently. "We'll figure it out together." "Istas will be thrilled. She's been asking for a sibling. She'll be a good older sister." They lay in the dark planning. Boy or girl names, how to expand the house, whether they could afford another mouth to feed. Practical concerns mixed with wild hope, the combination that defined parenthood. 7 months later, Greta gave birth to a healthy boy. They named him Nantan Ernst Nantan, for spokesman in Cheyenne, honoring Dakota's heritage. Ernst for Greta's father, honoring hers. The baby had Greta's pale hair and Dakota's dark eyes, a perfect blend of their combined histories. Istas held her brother with fierce gentleness, already protective. "I'll teach him everything," she announced. "How to read and catch lizards and be brave." "Sounds perfect," Dakota said, exhausted and happier than he'd been in years. Doc Morrison stopped by to check on mother and child, found everyone healthy. Marshal Potter sent a telegram of congratulations from Santa Fe. Ayanna brought enough food to feed an army, stayed to help with laundry and dishes, and the million small tasks new parents forgot existed. The house was chaos. Wonderful, exhausting chaos. And through it all, Dakota felt Misai's presence not as a ghost or regret, but as a foundation. She'd given him Istas, taught him how to love, showed him that strength came in many forms. Without her, he wouldn't be here holding this new life, building this new family. He'd never forget her. But he was learning slowly to let the grief coexist with joy. To hold both truths simultaneously, that he'd lost someone irreplaceable, and that life had given him second chances anyway. It wasn't about moving on. It was about moving forward. Different direction entirely. Spring came, painting the desert in wildflowers. Dakota stood in his yard one morning, watching Istas help Greta hang laundry while Nantan slept in a basket nearby. The chickens now ate. Greta had been right, pecked in the dirt. The sun climbed the sky, predictable and warm. Ordinary. Miraculous. Earned. He thought about that day in Brennan's mercantile when a frightened German woman had handed him Misai's medicine bag with honest hands. How one moment of integrity had changed everything, set them all on this path. The medicine bag hung inside now in a place of honor. Not forgotten, not buried, but also not a shrine to the past. Just a reminder that good things could come from tragedy if you were willing to do the hard work of healing. Greta saw him watching and smiled the genuine smile she'd slowly learned to trust, no longer flinching in anticipation of punishment. "Come help with this sheet," she called. "It's fighting me." Dakota crossed the yard to his wife, his daughter, his son, his family. He helped with the sheet, and then with breakfast, and then with all the ordinary tasks that filled a day. There were no dramatic rescues, no violent confrontations, no life or death stakes. Just life. Real and hard and beautiful. And in Red Mesa, New Mexico territory, 1884, that was more than enough.